All right, so I wanted to kind of do a little commentary follow up on a video I just saw. I guess a bit of my own response to Dan here from Real World Types. In fact, let me share the screen here. Boom, here we go. A man from Real World Types. He had an interesting take there on Endless Kurtis's typing session, um, and particularly his discussion on TI versus TE. Uh, so let's start with the TI versus TE thing. So he was commenting on how TI basically will listen to a system or listen to something and start taking out little pieces of it, pieces that make sense or pieces that that individual likes, and will take that piece out from the system and maybe take a different piece out from somewhere else. Might take pieces from a whole nother system and then start combining all these different pieces like Lego blocks that they took from various places that they like and kind of start forming their own understanding of their own system altogether. So maybe another way to describe that is maybe somebody who is listening to multiple typology systems and is not choosing one over the other, but is rather just kind of like picking these bits and pieces from every one of them and then applying them in their own way, to create their own system that way. All right. And he's contrasting that to a TE user who might instead look at each different system and just pick and choose which one they like more. So somebody might say, I like Socionics Model A, so I'm going to stick with that. But I'm very much aware of objective personality or MBTI or Jungian or, um, Helen Fisher, Kiersey, like all these different things. Right. And the TE user will just jump between whichever one they feel is more suitable for the moment or whatnot. I rather like that approach because I think that makes sense to me from what I've seen with people. Uh, Somebody that pops up to my mind, I wonder if he show up on here like that. Have you ever seen, was it Ben Vasserlin? Remember his jazzes? I don't know if it's gonna pop up on here. I probably have it all. Yeah, there we go. Whatever. Yeah, here we go. There's old Ben. And of course, we have to deal with the stupid commercials. Anyway, most of you probably know who this guy is, right? INTP Ben Vasserlin over here. He is LII INTP. If you ever watch any of his stuff, this guy is always going on about multiple systems. There he is. He's got his girl Haley over here. Uh, Ben is always like mixing and matching and combining different systems and stuff. He is rather annoying at that, actually. In fact, you can look at it, just look at his screen, right? You're seeing all this Enneagram stuff. You're seeing some version of socionics, whatever, right? It's like a lot of these guys are always mixing and matching stuff. There's another dude that you see on, um, if any of you are on like the Facebook World Socionic stuff, you see that Jared Vaughn guy who's also always posting something every like 12 seconds, it seems like. And he just insists on like mixing and matching pieces from MBTI and pieces from here and how do we put them together and so forth. And that to me strikes me as the TI that Dan was talking about. Just taking all these different parts. TE is more like, hey, let's just kind of choose a system. So that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not entirely sure how consistently accurate that's going to be. I feel like I've seen that a lot, but I don't know how accurate that's going to be because I have seen types like SLEs in particular, who I guess would have high demonstrative TE. Um, demonstrate that they will watch different things. They will they will like to choose what's his name? Damon Gray is one of them who's commented on like just wanting to pick a system. Like let's just be consistent in choosing a system. If we're going to talk socionics, let's talk socionics. If we're going to talk MBTI, then let's talk MBTI. And just kind of sticking to the system. And he would be an SLE with TI usage as well. So uh, I think this TI description makes a lot of sense, maybe for like a high TI user. So maybe someone who's TI dominant. I'm not so sure how well it holds up when you're comparing it to um, somebody who's good at TI, like an SLE or even an ILE. Take Jack. Jack, for example, I mean, he focuses heavily on socionics model A, really doesn't drift too far from that, but he's very aware of the other systems, the other versions of socionics and other typology systems out there, and he knows them well. He'll talk about them, he'll argue them, debate them, etc. But he chooses to stick to model A of socionics. He may tweak a couple of things here and there because he just realizes that some things don't function quite so well or they get lost in translation, and so they need to be adjusted somewhat so that people kind of get the right idea. Uh, so it's an interesting discussion there. FI being inconsistent now. Second part. Yes, FI is a bit inconsistent because it's a feeling function, period. So you can't really base it on, you're basing it on a different criteria. Feelings are feelings, ethics, emotions. This is a whole different thing, and thinking is a something else, right? Thinking is the data, the knowledge that's out there in the world that we can observe. So it's by its nature an external thing. And then we're going to use TI or TE on how we're going to evaluate that data. Yeah, I think it's good enough. But meanwhile, feelings are by its nature subjective. It's a feeling thing, right? It's how someone feels, how anybody feels. Feelings by their nature are that way. But you can, of course, spread feelings a bit. You can try to influence others to feel what you're feeling, get on your level what you want them to feel. You can try to do that. You can try to do it, of course, with extroverted feelings and kind of get people to get into a certain mood, but it's temporary emotions, right? And they can feel what you're feeling temporarily in the moment. You can get on my level. If I make things sad enough, then you'll feel the sadness I'm feeling. If I make things happy enough, then you'll be enthusiastic like I am. Introverted feeling is more on that consistent emotion, right? Consistent feeling. I feel a certain way about someone or something, usually someone, and it's consistent. This is how I feel about them, and that's just going to be what it is. So there is a sense of consistency here, but the consistency that we're talking about is how I feel about a person or maybe a certain thing, but usually we're talking relationships almost all the time. So this is consistent. So this kind of like discussion about consistency, and feeling we're sort of blending two different things here. We're discussing like consistency in the way we think about it from a logic point of view, thinking point of view, and then we're kind of like mixing that with consistency about feelings. The example given is also not so great in that if it's like, oh, well, I work out consistently every day, but today I just don't feel like it. Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons you don't feel like it that day, you know, whatever, and that's also could be a temporary mood. You're just not in the mood that day, right? So is that FE now? No, it's not FE. It's just how you feel at the moment. You're not trying to influence anybody. But is it FI? No, it has nothing to do with how you feel towards people or feel about a thing. So it's not really that either. It's more in this area of just transient emotions, how you feel at that moment, some mood that you're in, whatever, right? Now, if you had said you work out every day doing a certain kind of workout, and then you no longer believe in that workout because you now think that the workout itself does not produce the kind of results you wanted to, you've changed your mind on that. Ah, why? You get new data, you process something differently, and you change it in some particular way. Now we're thinking more in we're just thinking now, TE or TI. Um, so it was just it's not a that particular piece is not a great example. It doesn't take away, I think, from what you're trying to say on the TI and TE and maybe what Kurtis is trying to do. Uh, it doesn't really take away from that. I just think that that piece kind of got muddled up with the whole feeling examples and stuff. Uh, I did like the use of examples that Kurtis was doing a TE-ish thing of looking at all these different systems and then trying to like pick the system and pick which one seems to be working and which one is not working. Um, I agree with that, and I can relate to that myself. There's not many systems I haven't encountered either. Uh, as far as him like bouncing around, I guess in some ways he just doesn't feel quite satisfied with the explanations. He has gotten ESFP in different systems, which I agree it's a good thing. It shows that there's a precision in the typological community at being able to consistently type the same person over and over again the same way. We're all basically coming to the same conclusion, you know. And as long as the person can read it and be happy with it and say, yeah, this is the best one out of all 16 types, this is then now we have accuracy as well as precision. So it is a good thing for typology. But why Kurtis himself is not content with that is another matter. Not sure. And it also seems like he, is having some fun with the overall community because he likes to just kind of fuck around, it sounds like. It seems like he has quite the reputation for just sort of running around, fucking around with people. Uh, During this particular typing session with Jack, I just thought that, the session itself was kind of garbage. It turned out to be a garbage session. Um, and I say that because it just felt to me when I looked at it like Jack didn't go through the usual typing process that he follows. A lot of his kind of questions weren't that he normally asks were not really being asked. He did ask some things and then sort of let the conversation go, and he tried to work it from there. But I feel like the whole time, much of the discussions just kind of went in whatever which directions. It just kind of went all over the place wherever um, Kurtis kind of wanted it to go. It's quite possible that someone like Kurtis, who maybe knows a lot of typology stuff, he's got so much of it in his head that he also knows how to fuck with the system itself. He knows how to influence the questions, influence the answers that it's going to lead a typologist like Jack down a particular path. And Kurtis may not even be doing that on purpose. He may simply just have all this stuff in his head subconsciously that now he's biased it, he's influencing the test itself. Right? That's always something you want to guard against in any kind of exam or psychological testing and so on. You don't want the subject to really understand the system because you don't know how they may be influencing it, even on a subconscious level. So that typing session, as I said, Kurtis came out extremely beta. I don't think there's a single person who would say otherwise. That based on that session, he came out extremely beta with almost no doubt that that he was beta. I mean, he couldn't have been anything else. It was just beta. So somehow the entire typing session just broke down. The whole system fell apart. And that's something to kind of like look into as to why that happened, if only for a learning point for people doing typing sessions and someone like Jack. The whole thing crumbled and fell apart. When we got to the follow-up session, Jack led off with discussing SLE and beta because that's what he had gotten from the typing session itself. So he went on that road. It was Kurtis who interjects and goes, "Hey, let's talk about SEE now." And Jack just kind of obliged, like, "Okay, yeah, that's a type that has SE, so let's talk about it. Let's do it. Okay, well, this is what an SEE would normally present like, etc." And then Kurtis proceeded to kind of like keep pushing things in the direction of SEE. He brought up some stories or examples, which even Jack says is not necessarily an SEE thing, or he doesn't really know how that fits for an SEE. He goes, but this is something I have seen for SEE, or this is how maybe it could fit if I was trying to create a narrative. In other words, Jack never really gets to SEE, not for a while there. It's Kurtis who throws SEE into it, and Kurtis who keeps pushing the SEE thing, and then keeps asking about it, and and trying to elaborate on as to why it's SEE. But it's almost like he influenced Jack to go in that direction. So Jack, doesn't really come to SEE on his own because Kurtis doesn't really display SEE throughout this whole process. My point is that it doesn't mean that Kurtis is not an SEE. He could be. Again, he was typed as SEE by several other people already. So, you know what? He probably is. And just more than likely understands the system and fucks around so that he manipulates the whole session until he just comes out as a peacock. He's fucking anything. Um, Overall, I think that the biggest problem and the biggest reason we're all talking about a lot is just that the session itself came out pretty shitty. And that's again the frame of how to go through the typing process kind of fell apart. Maybe Kurtis influenced that, whatever he did, but ultimately the typing session just kind of crumbled. If we want to take a good positive out of it, we could all say, well, based on the person he presented, we all were kind of like zeroing in on the same thing. Everybody was gravitating towards a beta. Everybody was thinking of one of the Energizer betas. And now it was just like, is it EIE or is it SLE? And, kind of going with that. So at least we were all kind of united in going in the same direction. Good precision there. But the typing session as a whole was kind of a clusterfuck. Which again, maybe that's part of what Kurtis also in part wants from time to time, just to have some fun, wreak havoc, and throw a fucking grenade in there and just cause some fucking chaos and shit, for the fun of it. I don't know. So anyway, that pretty much covers all that stuff. Again, I did like the descriptions of the TE thing. I do feel like I see that with LIIs in particular. This whole like taking pieces from all these different systems and then trying to like Lego block put all that shit together to have your own Frankensteinian thing you have going on, rather than just pick a system and stick with that particular system. I still think that's a pretty good observation. So anyway, good vid, nice ideas, nice chatting.